I used to spend weeks and weeks and weeks, months sometimes, before I started an album, going around with little recorders, recording noise, sound, anything. I would find a gate and slam it. You know, the one I remember the most is I found a piece of concrete with a fence post in it, and you had to drag that about, and you'd drag it over metal drain covers, drag it across concrete and record everything. You had to try to find sounds that you've never heard before. That when you play it, you get excited, you shout, whoa, whoa, it's amazing. How can I use that? I never thought I'd be making music in my 60s. You know, when I started this as a teenager, I never thought it would hold my interest for more than a few years. I thought I'd be doing something else, you know, many other things. But the thing about electronic music that I've come to realise is that it's never ending. You know, there are a never-ending number of sounds that you can just get excited by and find uses for. And, you know, as your life evolves and your worries and ups and downs, and, you know, you grow as a person, you become more understanding on the one side, you're more angry on another. You know, it's your constant work in progress, aren't you? And I think the music that you make definitely reflects that along the way. When I did Wembley and stopped, I think it was a really good decision. I just don't think I should have made a big thing about it. I should have just quietly done it, just slipped away and come back when I was ready. But I didn't, and I just ruined it. And almost from that moment was trying to make up for it. You know, the music has gone from being this fun thing with my friends to this massive business. And all I really wanted to do was to sort of run back home and hide away and just write my little tunes again, sort of to keep my sanity, really. And then Wembley become this sort of symbolic target for recovery. And so Wembley's a thing I've dreamed about since 1981.
No other gods there. We must have done something wrong. This doctor's ends. We're independent from someone. This racket and call me. Would like to bring your voice. This racket and call me.
What's the first concert you saw?
83 Warriors.
1980.
C21.
Yes. Row 4. No. Yeah, but 1983.
I know it looks like a hoodie,
I
but
was
it's
too
really
young to go to the Wembley, and my mum's in a wheelchair, right? And when I was, admittedly, I was 11, and she wouldn't let me go, and I sobbed for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I said to her then, and I promised her, when you need me, I'm not going to be there for you. Because you won't let me go. I've never forgiven her. I've never forgiven her.
Everyone remembers their moment. Mine was 1979 in the autumn. I came home from school, I was 15, and just before my tea with Mum and Dad at 4 o'clock, and Complex was on the radio. And it just sounded totally different than anything I've ever heard at that time. And I thought, who's this guy? What's this all about? And then I listened to Our Friends Before on Cars, and that was the moment I had.
Beautiful.
It's 41 years today since we did the third Wembley, when I actually quit. 41 years today.
Is it 41 years today?
Yeah. Today.
I was at that one.
How weird was it? What
That was
weird
the
coincidence
worst
that
day
is?
of my small, tiny life. You ruined my life. That day, 41 years ago.
This has been the greatest years I've ever had in my life.
It has been said that you stop maturing emotionally when faced with a traumatic event early in life. Some people might consider that immediate success a traumatic event. When Nirvana became popular, I think I was 22 or 23 years old. So, unfortunately, I think I'm stuck there for the rest of my life. But I do think that it's a difficult transition, not only to make it through that period, but make it out of that period. That's not easy. At a young age, when you might not necessarily have the tools, you might not be equipped to deal with it. And sometimes it just takes going away. And then I think it really depends on your intention. Why did Gary Numan start making music again? Probably because he had to. That's who he is. That's the air that he breathes. That's what he does.
Where's Richie?
I don't think music is something you can just put down.
Go, Richie!
I don't think you can quit being a musician. You either are or you aren't. So with that intention and without expectation, it's just another hill you have to climb. And if that's the person that you are, then you just do it.
I can listen to you scream pretty music to my ears. I can listen to it all if you want me to. I can talk about my world, how you brought about rules. I can talk about your dream if you want me to.
Sometimes I'll like sit down and be like, I just realized who my dad is sometimes, and I'll be like, it's weird because I'll go out on tour with him sometimes. I'll sit backstage and I'll just watch and be like, he's gonna be at home one day just drinking a hot chocolate at the counter. And I'm just kind of like, it's weird to think that he can both be a dad at home and be a person on stage just performing. I find it quite funny sometimes. I'll look at old videos of him and I'll look at like new videos. He's extrovert and introvert, so each of his songs, like some of them sound like have a similar tune to them, but they have new ways about them, each of them, and like I love them. And he kind of helped create a new music.
It was really impactful. I thought it was completely different to anything. Of course, I wasn't in that time, but to anything that I think people had seen before, especially with the makeup he would wear and the outfits that he wore.
Here in my car, I feel safest of all. I can lock on my doors. It's the only way to live in cars.
His face, like his stern, he was like a mysterious and cold. and I think people loved that about him. And then again with his music, it created like a alienistic type sound, and I think it really drew people in because, like I said, no one had ever heard anything like that before.
We were all the disciples in one way or the other of Dr. Robert Moog, who designed that synthesizer. Well, just having the technology isn't enough. You gotta find somebody who's a fool enough to go and switch it on and go, what happens when I press that button they tell me not to press? And with Gary, there's still this sort of sense of childlike wonderment of, hey, let's just see what happens when you push that button. Is the house going to burn down, or is it going to make a nice piece of music? I like that recklessness. I like that anarchy.
When I found the Mini Moog, it was like finding a really, really cool toy that I could play with. And it was absolutely tailor-made for the sort of interest that I had in music, but didn't really realise that I'd had that interest. It was like stumbling across something that you've been looking for a long time without ever knowing that you were looking for it. And that was a proper eureka moment. All of a sudden, all of that fascination for sound, there was a machine that you could use that. You could take that love of sound and noises and well, one note will do sort of attitude to it, and you could merge it with melody and songs, and this whole new sort of music just fell into my lap, really.
I think Gary clarified a lot of things. He's a great one for cutting through the crap, and he got rid of all the extraneous stuff. He dispensed with all the usual formats, and that's what I liked a lot. You know, there wasn't a chorus, he didn't sing harmonies, it wasn't upbeat. You could just about dance to it. I knew he was using a Moog setup, and it was a great combination, you know, of using, because he still liked guitars, he liked working with guitars. I was busy trying to eliminate guitars and drums, but Gary loved that combination of real drums and guitar and with a synthesizer. And I think he was right in retrospect, you know, that was the best way to work.
It was the missing link that made music suddenly super exciting and took me in a direction that I just jumped on it with both feet and started to run, you know. I loved everything about it.
I loved the textures, I loved the way it sounded, I loved the instrumentation, I loved his weird voice, and it seemed like just someone from another planet, certainly from a world outside the one I was trapped in at the time. You know, I grew up in a little town in Pennsylvania, and when I think back to that record, and I can picture myself lying on my bed with that album out, I can remember distinctly feeling like I kind of didn't want to like it because it felt like I feel lonely and I feel like an alien in this town I'm in, and I can't relate to anybody, and I don't have that many friends, and I don't feel like I fit in, and I don't know how to get out of here. And something about hearing someone else feel that way, I felt comfort, but I also felt like I don't know if this is helping my case to kind of wallow in this. But, you know, I got sucked in.
I did the first album when I was 20, and then the second album, Replicas, went to #1. And then I did Pleasure Principle the same year. So I did 3 albums in under 12 months, I think. So all of that happened within months of finding a synthesizer. I'm #1, single and album. And, you know, and I'm just turned 21. You know, you can't have a more exciting... What can be more exciting than that? You know, it's just the best thing ever.
Oh, please don't turn me off. I don't know what I'm doing outside. Me and the telephone that never rings. If you were me, what would you do? For me, I disconnect from you.
Was there a moment when you suddenly realised Gary Numan had become a huge phenomenon?
Yeah, I think the moment where that I really got that, which was after the 2 #1 albums, was when he toured, when we started the touring Principle, and which was September of '79, I think. And the tour started in Glasgow, when the show was incredible and the audience went completely crazy. And at the end of it, we opened the stage door, and there was this avalanche of fans trying to pour in. We hadn't organised security. We didn't realise we were going to need it. And we kind of had to fight our way to the bus and drove off down the street with fans bashing on the windows. And that was the point at which I realised that this was really something.
My conversation with nothing more than lies.
All of my learning about how to be a performer was done having become #1. So now everyone's looking.
You're just a viewer.
And everything is being judged, and you know you have a lot to learn. And the press were horrendous. And you're aware of that. I mean, I could count the good comments that I had for the first few years on one hand and have several fingers to spare. You know, it was as bad as that. It was pretty awful.
Fucking British press, you know what I mean? Here's what happens in the UK, at least back then. What you had 3 weekly or bi-weekly publications, Sounds, Melody Maker, and the NME. All of them competing against each other to find the next big thing or destroy it. So you have to find reasons to love or hate someone. And that's some fucking bullshit. Let the audience decide.
I bet you're so surprised to see me.
To see them take someone down like that, as a fellow musician, working hard to do the thing that I love to do, or put food on my fucking family's table, I don't like that.
And I want you to fall in. I tell you when I go down.
I never saw what I was doing as being bad. You know, you're writing songs. How is that a bad thing? And you're writing songs that millions of people are now enjoying. So what harm have you done? You know, that you deserve all of this vitriol that's coming. I really don't know. You're trying your best to just not be big-headed. You know, not start to think like you're special, because I never thought I was. Just keep your feet on the ground and treat everybody the same, and just be what you were. You know, but you're doing it in a world where absolutely everything is different, and so much of it is weird. Weird, man. You know, just getting death threats, loads of them. Just everything goes mental. And you're just expected to take it in your stride and chat about your album. And, you know, everything around you is just going berserk. And you're just, what the fuck is this? You know, and you just want it to stop. It's sort of been said that when you're at the front end of something, you're the first person to open the door. There is quite often resistance to that door being opened. And with synthesizers, for example, a lot of people didn't want synthesizer music. They didn't like it, didn't appreciate it, didn't see it as real music. And so there was considerable resistance to it. And so if there are sticks and arrows being aimed at that doorway, well, you're getting them all.
It's almost traditional in art movements. When a new movement arrives or happens, it's instantly rejected by the establishment. I mean, the classical world rejected the beginning of jazz, like jazzmen later on rejecting the beginning of rock and roll, like rock people rejecting the electronic music and synthesizer thing. It's not an instrument. This kind of machines with knobs. I mean, these are like telephone devices or whatever, but they're not real instruments. Actually, it's interesting to notice that still now synthesizers are called machines and not music instruments.
We, the guys who were interested in synthesizers, were really looked down upon by pretty much everybody. And the question still comes up, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a musician, I play a synthesizer. No, what are you going to do for a living? I mean, that stuff, it's just, it'll take us 100 years before we will make people understand that that is actually a legitimate job we have, and we're trying to make music, and we're trying to make people happy, and we're trying to be we're trying to bring something interesting into the world.
Oh, I could listen to you scream pretty music to my ears. Oh, I could listen to it all day if you want me to.
I almost single-handedly destroyed my own career with this bad decision, and I spent the vast majority of my career trying to get back to where I was when I ruined it the first time. The thing that is the marker for me to be truly back to where I was is to be able to play Wembley again. Not albums, Wembley. That is the thing that matters the most. And just knowing that it's coming is very, very special. But I think when I walk out on stage at Wembley, that will probably be the best moment of my life.
I fell in love with him in 1979, Top of the Pops, Our Friends Electric, Jaw Dropped. It's not been the same since. They're in our 50s now. Christ, it's been a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, very long. Teenager when the first time I saw him, so...
Well, my dad dropped me off at Bristol Hipdrum just around the corner here. When I first saw him, he was waiting outside for 2 or 3 hours while I was inside watching him. Brilliant. He keeps reinventing himself as well, doesn't he? He's just like a breath of fresh air. He's just no one else like him. He's totally unique. He's on a different plane, isn't he? He's nothing... Yeah.
He's a legend. The songs, they just got so much power.
Resonate,
Yeah.
And as much as he doesn't advertise it, his love songs, just absolutely perfect. Some of them do resonate, certainly with my life. The sad part, but still made me feel good.
It's ruling the line, the eyebrow.
How's the voice, Gary?
That's it'll be okay, but it's yeah, it's I can feel it. It's been really. It feels like it's pulled too tight, and it feels brittle. It sounds brittle to me, so that it's not right. But, I was hoping that having the day off yesterday would be enough to bring it back, but it's exactly the same. I think all it is, when we did rehearsals, we were doing probably at least 5 hours a day, just constantly singing, just banging through it. The worry is that it can go either way at the minute, so, and we know we've got 4 shows in a row, and all this is building up to Wembley, where you want it to be as good as it can possibly be. So yeah, I'm really worried, actually.
I mean, not 12th grade at Fusion, 12th grade at Leela.
Oh. Do it southern accent now.
I'm going to the mailbox to get the letters.
Brilliant. Raven?
Absolutely not.
Why did you choose to live in California?
There were several reasons, actually. The first one, the most insistent reason, was Gemma. Gemma's wanted to live in America since she was born, I think, and so there was this gentle but never-ending sort of pressure, just keep nudging away, and that had an effect on me. And I'd always wanted to live here myself when I was in my early 20s, and life just kind of took me in another direction. I'd gone away from it. Gemma, actually, when we met, she had, was that you were going to come to America with do forensic science or something?
Yeah, I wanted to be a forensic, I didn't know what it was called, but like a profiler, or I wanted to interview murderers, serial killers. So I would have loved that sort of job. And but I started seeing Gary a few months before I would have started, so I had to make a choice of that or take a gamble on hopefully he's nice. And I took a gamble on you instead, didn't I? Mm-hmm. Luckily it worked out.
Well, so far so good.
Yeah, but nearly 30 years later.
How did we ever stay together?
I don't really know how I lasted with you. He used to tuck his jumpers into his trousers.
Yeah, it's true, yeah.
And wear fucking moccasins. And
don't have to swear.
Iron, I do, because it's natural. And iron a pleat down the centre of his jeans. And they were blue. There's a lot of things. He had a lemon and grey jumper. That is a terrible combination. And he's Gary Numan. What are you doing? And braces. There's a lot.
There was
so much.
Yeah, there was a lot to fix, wasn't it?
There was a lot of stuff I overlooked.
So are we over? Is this our end of days? Are we so broken that you can walk away?
lost was very, very important in us getting through a particularly difficult problem coming out the other end. Yeah, if I have a really, really good day or I'm really, really happy, I'm absolutely not going to write about it. But if something really bad happens or if I'm really worried about something, then that's all I want to write about it.
And when you think back to all the love shared, do you feel anything?
A few years ago, Gemma had got postnatal depression and she was really in a bad way. It was very difficult to be around. And then as she was sort of beginning to come out of that, so I went into it, and then I was diagnosed with depression. And that point at which we crossed was awful. And the only time, we've been together about 30 years now, the only period we've ever had where we struggled a bit. I was thinking about just running away from the whole thing. So was she. I didn't realise that. And I went out to the studio and I'd written this lovely, really, really pretty sort of lost song, and started to write the words for it. And it started out as, you know, it was all going to be about why I was leaving and, you know, how horrible and all the rest of it. And what it ended up being, what was remembering all the things that were great.
Just let me run around. I don't want to pose.
I'm doing it. You know, all the things that were brilliant about her. And it made me realise, you know, the mistake that I was making. And it was fantastic. I want to see the mountains.
These ones?
And it totally changed the way I felt about everything. And I went inside and said sorry. And that was that. You know, that never had a problem again. You know, without being able to write songs, I wouldn't have been able to have done that, and we probably wouldn't be married.
To listen to you say that you love me like you used to do, like I need you to, but we're lost.
Does living here in California affect your music?
I'm not sure that the music is drastically different since I've been here as when I wasn't here. It feels to me as if it comes from the same place, same little corner, you know, wherever the imagination thrives. And I don't know that where I am has any bearing on that, to be honest. You know, I certainly don't write surfing songs now that I've come here. You know, it's just as dark as ever. You know, I think being happy and just enjoying where you are and life in general, I think it does or can feed imagination just as much as, you know, difficult times and desperate times can obviously feed it as well.
Flow my tears, the new police song, the slogan of pieces, you must live.
I think that there is a kind of punk dimension into Gary, where he was probably carrying the no future syndrome, where I was more into what future question mark.
Where I lived, there was just trouble everywhere. You know, I shied away from it all the time. And it just seemed like every time you went out, that was happening. And it wasn't a little punch up in the corner. It was all hammers and bricks on people's heads, and, you know, that probably contributed a lot to why I didn't go out much. I was really aware that I was different, and that the way I saw things or reacted to things was often very sort of at odds to the way other people around me were reacting. I wish it had made me feel cool, but it didn't at all. It made me feel excluded, and I think a lot of my songwriting started to be based on that. I'm interested in people, and the terrible things that people do and why, and where that will lead us. It's never been about aliens and ray guns and all that sort of thing. It's always been about the problem with humans and the way they behave and what will that ultimately become.
Until him, electronic music was more maybe impressionistic and also not that dark. He injected a dose of anger into, I don't know if it's into electronic music, but maybe he used electronic music to convey and to express his anger.
It's fun, isn't it? The way you see yourself is so different often to the way people see you. I know I was quiet. You know, I didn't have a great many friends. I was very much at home working on music. The first part of my life, it was essentially just me and my mum for most of it. My dad was always working, you know, to try to get us out of where we were. He used to have 2, sometimes 3 jobs at one time, which is lovely, you know, very commendable, but it meant I didn't really see him much until I was a bit older. We lived quite near Heathrow Airport, and so the airliners were around a lot. My grandparents lived very close to the airport, directly under the flight path of one of the runways. And I would lay out in the garden and wait. And you'd hear it coming just loud and loud. It would just suddenly appear like a shock. And you could see right up into the wheels, and the noise was deafening. And it would be gone. You spend hours and hours and hours just watching them. There's just something about aeroplanes. They're just like the ultimate machine to me.
What happens is you have a life. Something interferes with it. In my case, a motorway got built near the town I lived in. One at the front and one at the back. So we became a motorway island, and I hated that. But I had to come to terms with it somehow. So that's why I used to record it and try to do things with the recordings. It's like kind of magic, you know. I could get hold of this stuff and work with it. I'm sure Gary was the same with the airport being near his house. That all the time you're subjected to this drone.
There's a definite connection between the depth and roaring sort of statement of power that comes from the big aeroplane and my favourite types of sounds when it comes to music. Again, it's that low, roaring rumble, because it stirs something in you. You feel that power, and it's just, you know, it's exciting for me. But is that music in the way that we used to think of music? I think the trick is trying to find interesting noises that you can make musical. And that's the most fun side of it for me. But I don't feel that I have any sort of intellectual process going on. It's just emotional. how it makes you feel. It's all feeling, all of it. My mum and dad had a hard time with me. I don't think I was easy. You know, I know I had a terrible temper and could be awkward, and I've always been moody, so that must have been difficult for them. But I mean, I do remember when I was at junior school, I got to the 11 plus, and I did really well, and I passed that. And there was only like 4 children that were on this top level of math, and I was one of them, and they were all very proud of that. And I got to grammar school, and that was a big thing. And I think at that point, I don't know for sure, but I think they kind of just sort of breathed a sigh of relief and sat back and thought, you know, our work is done. You know, he's in grammar school, going to get a great education, he can then pretty much do what he wants. But that isn't what happened. You know, the music thing and the desire for that life and what that could offer, or what I thought it could offer, became increasingly important to me.
3, 1, 2, 3.
And then school just became a burden, just something to get through, and I lost all interest in learning anything at all. I just wanted it done, and I wanted to get out, and I got really rebellious, and I started to get into lots of trouble because I was having problems with authority, and it just went horribly wrong. I mean, the headmaster said to me that I was the most disruptive pupil he'd had in 21 years of teaching. So I was pretty bad. I had really explosive temper. I had absolutely no patience with anyone. I ended up being sent to child psychiatrist to find out why I was the way I was and why I was having these outbursts and so on. And it was with a Dr. Frommer. And that's when Asperger's started to be mentioned. And I know that my mum took exception to that.
Eva Frommer was rather unusual child psychiatrist to the degree that she, unlike most child psychiatrists at that time, had no hesitation in prescribing medication, particularly antidepressants, to children.
I was put on 2 drugs. I was put on Nardil and Valium.
The side effects of Nardil were well documented, and one of them would have been drowsiness, another would have been overexcitement, another would have been difficulties in concentration, and it might have produced increases in aggressive behaviour and irritability. All those things, of course, it shouldn't have done, and anybody using the drug would have been aware of that possibility and would have stopped it if those side effects had become obvious.
So this is a box of stuff my dad found recently, which was interesting, including diaries and various things. But this letter was a letter from my headmaster at the grammar school that I was going to. This is a letter to my dad, my mum and dad. And this was November 1972, so I'd have been 14. And it says, blah, 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 blah. We are all of us here fully aware of Gary's long-standing illness, and we much hope that the looked-for improvement will quickly materialise. Dr. Frommer told me in her letter that the treatment she was giving to Gary was such that we should see a very marked improvement by half-term. If, however, his illness is prolonged, all I may do in my capacity as headmaster is to recommend to the Board of Governors that Gary should leave the school. It's interesting, actually, there that they talk about the results of what Dr. Frommer was doing. or the treatment I was getting. I wasn't aware of any treatment other than the drugs, or the Valium and the Nardil that they put me on. And that just kind of sort of blanded you out, really, kind of zombied you out, so you didn't feel much of anything, you know. So I'm not sure what the treatment was supposed to be. And as far as showing a marked improvement, it was absolutely nothing. Nothing. I got expelled after that.
2 years later, you were a superstar.
You know, yeah. When I've always been aware that I was lucky, you know, to do well in music, because I had nothing else going for me, because I'd made such a mess of school. You know, it's my parents that I think about the most in this, and how they must have felt. It must have been crushing for them. And you would understand it if at that point they sort of washed their hands with me a little bit and just let me go about my stupid business. But they didn't. They just threw themselves into it and, you know, gave me all the support that I needed. And that help, what they did for me then, that was what it took. I don't feel traumatised by any of the things that I was sort of going through when I was younger, and I wouldn't change it. You know, they say people with Asperger's have got obsessive tendencies, like that's a bad thing. Well, it's not a bad thing. You know, that's a really, really good thing. You know, for me to be able to sort of keep persevering with music, both initially to become successful to begin with, and then to claw myself back, having spoilt it, you know, that requires obsession, you know, an absolute, you know, tunnel vision focus on where you're going and what you need to do. And I think Asperger's is a gift for that. It gives you things that other people don't have. And the price to pay for that is that you're just a little bit awkward when you're out and about. You know, you can deal with that. Just get a wife that's loud. You know, that's that one dealt with then. Yeah, and I can be as Asperger's as I like.
Allow me.
You know, because, you know, she shields me from humanity. She is my buffer between me and the world.
Whether Gary Numan picked up an instrument or not, I think that he always would have been the person that he is. Fortunately, he did start playing music so that people like me felt that it was okay to be different. Because, I mean, I grew up in a suburb in Virginia where most people were like rednecks. And I was the skinny weirdo that people would shout shit at because I was like a punk rock kid. And, you know, my refuge was my record collection, and I would listen to these albums of all of these artists that made me feel like it was okay to be the weirdo. So thanks, Gary.
What's making Gary's music quite unique is his voice and the way he was delivering his songs. I always considered that the singers who are able to create boost impulse and create emotions are people who are not singing really on not respecting the pitch and not respecting the tempo. I mean, this kind of oxymoron, or contradiction, or contrast between the fact that he was like almost dancing with his voice, if I can say so, above this kind of very robotic type of arrangement, makes him very, very special, and also able to convey this kind of frustration, also anger, something which is, of course, part of his character.
I have the original multi-track here of Our Friends Electric, and these are all the different components that were recorded onto the multi-track back in '79. So it's kind of strange breaking down one of the biggest songs of the 1970s into these little components. So obviously we've got the Moog sound. That's the mini Moog. If we solo Gary's vocal, it's double-tracked.
Now the light fades out.
So that's one of the takes.
I know what I'm doing in a room like this.
And then I'll solo the other one with it. So it's double-tracked.
There's a knock on the door. And just for a second I thought I remembered you.
So he's very young now, obviously. And his voice is a lot higher than it is now. But what it is Gary Numan, isn't it? And even though his voice has deepened quite a bit, as all voices do over time, he's still retained that thing. I don't know. I can't explain it. You know, other people try to sound like him, but they just try to sound like him. But his voice is unique, isn't it? It's an instrument in itself.
When they caught me broken, I knew. When they caught me over, I knew. When they caught me ruined, I knew. I would always find my way to
you. Gary's voice to me, this sort of sounding like an alarm call a little bit, almost like a cry, but a controlled cry, you know, a musical cry. And I think that's kind of what I love about it, and what I love to do myself is to be able to kind of scream, I suppose, scream and cry through singing. And that feeling afterwards is a proper sense of purge. You know, it's a proper kind of, it's also addictive because it's a real adrenaline kind of booster for your body, but it totally feels like you have let something out and it has given you some relief, but also you've shared it too. You know, that's the kind of amazing thing about singing, I suppose, and music. You're kind of sharing that trauma, if it is trauma or anxiety, and people will pick up on that as well.
His melodies are always not melancholic, but they're unpredictable, I would say, and they're dark and really beautiful, because that unpredictability is what makes them so kind of like you like want to hear what's next, because you never know, because they're all, you know, like that. And he really likes the Middle Eastern, like a beautiful Middle Eastern type sound, and I love that as well. So I was at the piano and I write my own music, so I was doing just that, and I was you know, I was trying to make it sound dark and kind of eerie. And my dad walks in And it's a very simple thing. He just says, "Hey, can I steal that from you?" And I was like, "I guess." And then brought it into the studio, and he brought me in there with him to try and like teach him, first of all, how to play it on the piano.
No, titted.
It was a really fun experience because it's like, oh, my dad wants a piece of my music, that's so fun and cool. And being able to help him make it into what it is now was a really exciting experience as well.
And I was really impressed with what she'd done. It was so lovely. And I really wanted to write something with one of my children anyway. You know, that's just a bit of a dream for me to do that. And it just seemed a perfect one to try out. You know, I was able to contribute. You know, it really was a collaboration.
Do you remember the first additional element you put in?
Yeah. It was really simple. I just put a low string at the front. You know, it's completely unimpressive, but it just stops the beginning from being just a piano. Just like a cello. So it's nothing clever, nothing special. It's just a very simple little thing, but it's better than just being a piano. And instead of having just that, I added this little bit. And it does another little counter thing underneath it. See? And then you see the strings coming in. It is very much like it's a jigsaw puzzle of interconnecting pieces, but to begin with, there is no picture. So you come up with this. You know, when you do a jigsaw puzzle, you try to get all the edges first. Well, this first line, that just basic piano, that's your edge. You know, that's that framework. When you have that framework, the more you add, the more little pieces that you begin to build into this picture. So the more the picture begins to unveil itself, the more you begin to see. And then you're just listening for the gaps. You know, that there's something needed there. You know, that bit comes in, but it doesn't come in quite right. So you put a noise on it, and it brings it in. You're looking for that finessing part. But the heart of it really is that little melody that Persia came up with at the top. That's it, really. All you're really doing is wrapping that in pretty paper and a bow.
When I was a child, my life seemed endless, too far to say. When I was a child,
I think my dad's brilliant at storytelling. All of his songs tell a story. And I think that's, first of all, it's quite a difficult thing to do when writing a song, in order to make it sound beautiful, but yet still focusing on, you know, a storyline. And the way he writes his lyrics, they're very poetic, but not too poetic where you don't know what's going on. So it's like they make sense, but they're still beautiful, which I love.
These wells feed into the
I feel the end come. My childish dreams are undone.
The mood of the song will guide where the words are going to come from or what they're going to be about. It talks to you. You know, it puts you in a certain place. And I very rarely struggle with lyrics. They tend to come pretty easily, not always, but most of the time. And I think that's just, you just allow it to wash around you, and all the words that it needs, just, it almost chooses them. Do you know what I mean? You're almost just the head that the words are in, and the music is coming into you, and they all just find their place. You know, but they're nearly always about things that are very important to me.
I think when he first started, his music was not as deep as it is now, because, you know, 40 plus years later, he's got a different view on the world and he has opinions on things. And I think as you grow older, it kind of brings down a sort of veil that you have over yourself when you're younger. It shows you the real world. And I think that's what he talks about now, and that's what he focuses on now when he writes music, is the real rawness of the world.
Do you regret the words you never said? Do you feel lost like I do? Do you regret?
It's right there.
Where?
Hello. He just spouted and went down.
Straight ahead! Quiet! Hey! Can you save me? Can you feel me?
If the earth could speak, if it had a voice, it would be screaming in anger and in pain and in frustration. I think we're inherently unpleasant creatures. You know, if you're looking at the planet and the whole system of nature and all the creatures that live here, the only thing that causes a serious problem is us. I wish people could be like whales, because they're lovely and they don't hurt anything, and they're not greedy, and they're not selfish, and they're not materialistic. They just want to drift around and do their thing and bother no one.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Baby.
If you're trying to create a perfect place, then you need more of that sort of creature. Yeah, less bitey teeth.
Do you think me and you'll be like a couple of old whales blowing when we're
Don't you ever feel like an old whale just blowing?
just blowing away, full of barnacles?
I noticed tonight during the sound check and walking around on the stage that it's been a while since I've been on a stage as big as this, and just being aware that it's different, and the way you have to work on a bigger stage is different. I think I had too many chips today. It's not working.
Stay still.
You can't just stand in the middle on these bigger shows. You've got to use the stage a bit more and engage the people in different sides. And to be truthful, I'm a little out of practice with that.
Is this to calm the nerves?
I don't like it at all. I'm not a drinker. But I have found that it stops me from being overly concerned about... It stops me from being too self-aware. That's the thing. I become less self-aware and a little bit more confident. So I don't really care about anything. I'm just doing all my things. Just get into that place where you're just really enjoying the moment. And before that, which is most of my career, and only a relatively recent thing, I used to be really overly self-aware all the time, even when I've been doing it for a long time. You know, you'd sort of look out and you'd notice whether people were moving along to it or not, and then that would bother you, and it just stops all of that. It's just a lovely feeling of being a part of something, rather than always trying to think 2 gigs further down the line, where is this going and what can we do next, and the rest of it. It stops all of that. So it's been a really, really cool thing for me as far as touring's concerned. But it is disgusting, and I don't like it, and I would never become a drinker, you know. But I do like the place it puts me in for doing shows. The thing about flying, for me anyway, is that it's a sort of like an antidote, if you like, to music. Music is all about opinion. Your success is all about opinion. Flying doesn't have any of that. If you can do certain things in an aeroplane, it's a yardstick in the ground. It's an unmovable marker that says you are that good. You can do this thing. And it's not down to opinion, it's just a fact. And I love the certainty of that. I love the qualifications that came in. You know, after a while I could fly single-engine aeroplanes, multi-engine aeroplanes, instrument ratings, night ratings, aerobatics, tail aeroplanes. I did helicopters, jet helicopters, did all of it. You know, you went out and you did your lessons and you did the test and you got the certificate and you got the license. You know, it was real and it was there and it wasn't anybody's opinion, and I loved it.
Please wish no more. Please wish no more. Please wish no more. Please wish no more.
It's been a very interesting journey for me. I think I've had 3 #1 albums, and it was all at the very beginning, and it all seemed to be so easy. It just fell at my feet, you know. And it was so clear when I started. I was so on top of it, and I knew how it all pieced together. And when it all exploded, I sort of got crushed by the pressure of it and the demands of it. And everyone's saying, now you've only got 2 albums, you know, and then you'll be finished. You know, really bothered by that, and you wanted that to be wrong. So not wanting to be pigeonholed, wanting to just keep moving, exploring and going in different ways. And it wasn't like it was all bad, it was just I'd become less and less connected to what I was writing about. I'd become really self-indulgent, actually, some of the writing. And it just got worse and worse, really. It went on for about, I'm not sure, 10 years or so, and then I was finished.
No, that was...
You met me at the lowest point.
I met him at the
creatively.
lowest, yeah, not the worst image he'd ever had.
Worst album?
Worst album he'd ever had. And the things that I liked as a fan was being not gone away, it was hidden. It was hidden away. It was, I think I learnt from you that it was out of insecurity, wasn't it? You didn't feel confident in your voice anymore.
Yeah.
And so
I thought I was the weak
layering
link in the records. I already did.
Yeah, whereas it's Gary Numan that we want to hear, Gary Numan we buy, and it was getting covered in musicians.
To begin with, you know, I wasn't accepting what she was saying at all. I just thought she was being naive and stupid, and she didn't understand music the way that I did. And we had quite a lot of sort of rows about it, yeah, because I just wasn't going for it. But, you know, she just kept on chipping away, and eventually I began to understand the truth of what she was saying, which didn't mean that I was anything special at all, but it changed everything about the way I work. So when I went, the very next album I made after we got together was the Sacrifice one, where I just did everything on my own, and I just totally fell in love with the whole making music process again. And more than that, Jeremy had introduced me to a whole world of music that I hadn't heard before, and it was so inspiring, and it absolutely turned me full circle, and it saved me completely.
We were dust in a world of grim obsession. We were torn from our life of isolation.
You know, when Splinter got to, I think Splinter got to number 20, I'm not sure, that just seemed like the best thing ever. And then when Savage and Intruder got to number 2, it was a fantastic moment.
And the song we sang, what became of us?
You know, where most people that get to that sort of middle years of career, they just bland out a little bit. I went the other way. I just kept on trying to push forward, and every album got more aggressive,
Didn't
heavier,
do things for
and
money either. There was no, didn't do the 80s retro shows. All those
No, I
things that
never
started
got-
to be offered.
I got such
at
a hang-up
time when
about
there was
retro.
money was needed.
Yeah.
You still said no.
But I mean, I can't stand nostalgia, really, or that sort of thing. You're only as good as your next album. You should only be as good as your next album. What?
I don't think you're as good as everything you've made. You've done, you know, your past stuff is so amazing and things. But you always, you want to be better every single time, don't you? Do you see? Do you?
No, I absolutely don't see it like that at all.
You
no.
don't, do you? No.
You write Cars 5 lifetimes ago. Who gives a fuck? I don't give a fuck.
You don't.
Yeah, what I'm going to do tomorrow matters. All the rest of it, you know. What are you doing, Ron?
Hello, Ron. Look at your ears. Why are they that shape? Why are they that shape?
Ow! Ow! Ron!
It's on your nuts.
Stop!
It's on your nuts. Why is his ears so
Ow!
stiff?
Ron, that's really hurting.
I'd say he's one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most interesting artists I've ever come across. Obviously, he's my dad, so, you know. But I think it's inspiring that he's continued to change his music throughout the years. I think that's just something that not many people do, you know. They stick to the exact same sound, whereas he has tried out many different sounds until he's found the one he's really liked. So I think during the early 90s, when industrial music became quite big because of 9 Inch Nails, you know, 9 Inch Nails, they really created that whole industrial scene, and I think that was the new sound that satisfied him, and he started to create that, and he did it really well. And yeah, I think that's what he's stuck with for 20 years, you know.
Back in that time when I was trying to figure out what 9 Inch Nails was going to be about, there was someone that was vitally important to me. It was a huge inspiration, and it is with great pleasure and honor I present to you Gary Numan.
The guy that I met seemed oblivious to how crucial he was to an artist like myself and many other people I know. What he did, it changed the game. It made the canvas of what we could do much greater, the possibilities greater. And it was that frailty, you know, as one of the components, and in insecurity and uncomfortableness that resonated with lots of us, certainly me. I remember saying to him, you know, if it wasn't for you, there wouldn't be me here. And I know that's from many other people.
Put me in and turn me on. Oh, everything is
it's a tough old world, standing on the stage and making music. You're very vulnerable and full of people who'd like to bully you. And what you have to do is stand up for yourself somehow and get through it.
Is there an additional pleasure when you come back?
Yeah, because you've succeeded on your own terms. It's not just because of a piece of luck or coincidence or good fortune that you might have had at a certain point, so you got a hit record. It's more, you're playing a long game then, and it's a different game. It's about consolidating something you've built. And I think Gary did that, which is admirable and interesting. It means that the music's got a lot more depth, and the persona, the inventions, they are mysterious enough to draw people along. You want to know what happens next.
He's so prolific. I can't believe how many albums he's made. He's had this kind of level of modesty and insecurity throughout, and it's amazing, you know, now that he's doing these huge shows and it's still there. I think it's lovely, really.
We do the gift next. I'm not sure.
But I think if you want to keep saying something and feel relevant and feel like what you're doing is from the heart, then you have to always remain vulnerable to the world and yourself, don't you? You have to always be kind of thinking, you know, I am just a human and, you know, I'm not kind of invincible, and it's important to kind of share that. And he does share that so well.
I think that what for me makes a real exciting artist is the fact that you cannot really pick one song, but rather the kind of journey. And fortunately, Gary is still in his journey, continuing to explore sounds, to explore also his faith, in a sense.
So last time I was here, I just wanted to marry you.
What, now you want to divorce me?
No. Now I love you.
I really would like to say that I really admire also the fact that he succeeded so well in his private life. It is kind of quirky, sexy rock and roll family atmosphere.
Zach's got the long hair.
He's entirely depending on his family, and it's a compliment for me. I mean, Gemma is the kind of main nucleus of his life, and this is what probably is defining Gary the most. This kind of harmony he has, and he needs, because his fragility needs an absolute balance to be able to deal with his career, and he succeeded that, and I have lots of admiration for this, thanks to Gemma and his kids.
How are you feeling now?
I never get nervous.
But this is not nerves, Biff, it's emotional. We've been listening to no's and knocks at the door that weren't listened all those 90s years. Everyone said no, not interested, not interested, not interested, no, no, no. Fuck them, because this is where you are now. This is emotional. It's not stress. It's not nerves. It's emotional. And you've sold every ticket apart from about 10. Who cares? That's it. It's done. don't do that. You've got nothing. Look, you've got it sold out. You can play a strong rom. They love it. There's nothing to be terrified of. Nothing. And this time you're not going to say you're going to retire. There's nothing to be terrified about.
The rave continues on Sky Arts with the untold story of electronic music's female pioneers. Sisters with Transistors is new and next.
I can look into the